Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to the Animorphs universe. Today we're looking at dropped plot lines. For those of you who don't for some reason know what a dropped plot line is, we've got 64 Animorphs books and there were B plots. Obviously the A plot is the Yeerk invasion. That was brought to a climax, to an end. But there were a few B plots, side plots, that they started and then nothing happened with them. They just disappeared. The Animorphs series just forgot those plot lines or simply decided that it was too much to handle, that they just wanted to sweep it under the rug. Actually, we're not going to deal with that. There were a few, not too many, and I think I've basically covered near enough all of them in this list that I'm about to give you. These are the top 10 dropped plot lines. And why do I order them in the way that I end up ordering them? It's mostly down to how big of a subplot it was. So like if it's a really small one, then it's going to be further down the list. If it's a massive subplot, it's going to be further up the list. So let's not bugger about anymore. We're not Watch Mojo here. We're going to get straight into it without all the bollocks. Well, there probably will be some bollocks in it. I mean, I am a bloke after all. At number 10. These first two, by the way, sort of drop plot lines because you'd sort of expect more. There didn't need to be more, but you sort of felt that there was more to them than that they gave. So number 10 is the Clone Beia. The Clone Beia, book 34, The Prophecy. We make a new clone army of Hawk Beia to go back to the Hawk Beia homeworld to start a new front against the Yeerk organisation. Why is this one so far down the list? Mostly because we didn't necessarily need to see what was going on there. We just needed to plant that seed and let it do its thing in the background. The only thing is we never hear from it again. Not at all. Not even at the end of the series we get a little, oh, do you remember those? Oh yeah, they're still there and they fought off the Yeerks and they did a grand job. No, nothing. They just never mentioned it again. So as much as it could have just still been operating in the background, we can just sort of imply that. We never heard from it again, so it's on this list at number 10. Number 9, the Truck Ship from book 3. Now, I'm not sure if this video comes, it comes after. If you've seen my recent analysis on the tank ship, you may have already guessed this one being on the list. But the truck ship in book 3 was meant to take air and water to the pool ship in vast quantities on a daily basis, it's implied. Which would probably mean that that is all of their air and water going up to the pool ship, and they went through a lot of it, surely, if they're doing it, at least what is implied to be basically on a daily basis. So when the Animorphs blew up this truck ship, what happened? Did the Yeerks go crazy? Oh no, we've got no air and water left, quickly! Take drastic actions, do this differently, do that differently, exploit this area less. No, none of it. We never hear anything again. The one thing that could explain this away is if, and this was suggested in the book, they had a fleet of these tank ships and they just sent out a replacement. But why would you, I mean, yeah, theoretically, they could just get another one out, but the series didn't even think to mention it. They didn't explore it anymore. Oh, have we seen any more of those tank ships going around? Nah, just don't worry about it. Nah, just never mentioned again. It just got completely dropped. It got completely dropped, even though it should be this massive thing. They took down a tank ship that supplied the mothership with water and air. That's a big plot point, surely. But it turns out that no, it was actually very minor. That's why it's on this list. Number 8 comes from book 8, and you'll be seeing this book a lot on this list. Axe takes the blame for Elfangor's gift. So the whole Zero's kindness thing, where Prince Zero gave the Yeerks this technology, and then the law was made Zero's kindness because it was quite a bit of a misstep, let's call it that. And the Andalite said, right, no more are we going to give our technology to other races. Fair enough if that's what you want to do, if that's what gets you votes at the voting booth. But in book 8, Axe takes the blame for the Animorphs getting the morphing technology. He takes it off Elfangor's shoulders, basically at the suggestion of the prince who talks to him over the communications. So Axe has this on his shoulders now. It's going to be Axams Kindness. He is the one that was guilty of breaking the law of Zero's kindness and giving the Animorphs the power to morph. That was a big decision for him to do, a big thing for him to take on. What happened because of this? Nothing. Nothing at all. There is a moment where you could argue that perhaps a difference was made, and that comes in book... It comes in book 46, where they communicate with the Andalite fleet again. And he says, I am Axams and I'm reporting here from Earth. And the guy on the other end says, how do we know where your loyalties lie, Axams? Which you could argue is the Andalites on the other end knowing, that Axams bloke, yeah, remember he gave these humans the power to morph, he's obviously on the human side now. You could argue that. But what happened because of that conversation? Basically nothing, because the Andalites turned up pretty soonish anyway. And then what? And then in book 52, the Andalites are like, yeah, Axams, yeah, we're going to bond the humans, so you just do as you're told. So the whole thing of the Andalites being like, he's loyal to the humans now, so we won't pay attention to him. No, that's done now. He's loyal now, so we'll trust him with this secret. So, basically, Axams' kindness dropped plotline. Nothing ever came of that. At the end of the series, he gets promoted to be a prince. And no one thought to mention, hold on a minute, didn't this guy break the law of Zero's kindness? You know, not even a little mention. That's the same with a lot of these plot lines. A lot of them can be solved if they just mention it. Just say, oh, do you remember he gave the... Yeah, but don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. He did good work, therefore we'll just, you know, sweep it under the rug, much like this plot line. We'll sneak it under the rug. No, not even a simple little line to explain it away. It's just dropped. Axe is no longer responsible for this crime, apparently. It makes that whole moment in book 8 pretty empty, really, doesn't it? Number 7, it is the Kandrona. Now this was actually a big plot point for quite a few books. It started in book 7 where the Animorphs destroy the Kandrona. And then in book 8 we start to see the effects of it, these Yeerks starting to suffer. You could argue that it leads to what happens in book 17, The Underground, where Yeerks are taking this oatmeal so that they carry on surviving, but it sends them insane. The problem with this plot point is, yeah, it was quite big for a few books and they mentioned it for a while, and then it just stopped and it never got mentioned again. So this thing that they've been rolling out a few times like it was this big effect, then it just, the train wheels just went, stopped. Alright, now, they didn't say whether the Kandrona was replaced. That's probably the big thing. And you could say that it must have just happened in the background, but you'd at least surely mention that. Where would they put it as well? Because it was in the city, it was in the Animorphs town, and you'd think because that's where it's feeding the Yeerk pool, why else would it be in the town? For the rest of the series, the Yeerk pool is still there. It's still the main Yeerk pool. So if they replaced the Kandrona, it would be in the area again. Why didn't the Animorphs try to find it again? And do the thing again? Because you could see the problems that it gave the Yeerks. But no, it's just like, apparently they just assume that there's a Kandrona again, but nobody's going to ask any questions, nobody's going to pursue it, nobody's going to say, have they actually got a new Kandrona yet, or are they still funneling Yeerks up and down to the pool ship? It just disappeared. And it was a big plot point for a while, which is why it's higher up this list. They did maintain it for a bit, which makes it even weirder that then it suddenly got dropped again. It's one of those again where it can just be solved with a single line. Something saying, oh, there was we know where there's a new Kandrona, but the security on it is massive and impenetrable. Just something like that, and this would be off the list, you know, sorted, good, but it just never happened. They never addressed it. And this is another one that, you know, involves book 8. We will be seeing book 8 a few times, and it's quite telling actually. There's a lot that happens in book 8 that just gets dropped further down the line, which is really a big shame, because otherwise this would have been like a mega book. This would have been one of those where people are like, yeah, that's a brilliant book. It's not seen that way, probably because nothing happens because of it. Even the whole Axe's loyalty storyline, well, you just repeated that for the rest of the Animorphs book, so it's not like it stood on its own on that front. It's only the little scenes where he's doing silly little human things. Oh, an alien in a human world, how crazy. It's the only thing that keeps that book afloat, let's be honest. Anyway, moving on, number 6, Idris and the Anati. So Visser comes along. Visser Chronicles, as some people will call it. And by the end of it, both are found guilty. But because that book really doesn't want to take any dramatic risks, which is a shame and a big negative for that book, Garoth and the other council members just say, all right, Visser 3, just carry on doing what you're doing, and Visser 1, Idris, you go sort out the Anati planet, because a lot of rubbish is going on up there and we want you to sort it out. That's your ultimatum. If you fail at the Anati planet, you're on death's door. So a big thing is made of the Anati. A big thing. And there's a few little mentions from that point on of the Anati just sort of in the background. You're thinking, what's going on here? And then when's the next time we see Idris after this ultimatum, after we've had this whole book that she has narrated, we've built this character. She's being executed. Being tortured to death, basically. And that's weird. This isn't so much of a dropped plotline as it is just a rushed ending to a plotline that just feels so undeserved, really. So it should be lower in the list because it's not so much of a drop plotline, but because it's so big, it's mid-tier. And then there's even a part in book 46 where the Animorphs are saying, remember they're talking to the Andalites, this scene again. They're talking to the Andalites and they say, it turns out that the Anati planet thing was a trap and the Yerks have set a load of traps for you Andalites. So then you're thinking, okay, so why is Idris being put to death? How has she sodded that up? Did she go up there and just like sit around doing bugger all, like, might as well die? Because it doesn't look like the Yerks are having a completely torrid time up there, does it? So what happened with Idris? Why is she now dead? Why is she dying? You built up this character and you sent her off to do this thing, and then you're just going to skip that whole bit and just give us a crappy rushed conclusion? I consider that a dropped plotline, and a pretty disappointing one as well. Basically, I think they were coming to the end of the series and they thought, right, we've got to finish this up soon. We're not going to fit that storyline in, just skip it. Get it away. What a shame. I might do like an Anati Chronicles at some point, or someone else can do it if you want. Just like the Anati Chronicles, just giving us that bit in the middle that we're missing. That bit that this Scholastic was just like, nah, sod it. Don't want it. We're into the top 5 now, and at number 5 it is the voice at the end of The Familiar. This voice that turns up after Jake has this massive, almost realistic dream, and looks down at Jake, sort of, and says, these humans are pretty bloody interesting, aren't they? Shall we get a closer look at this lot over here? Might buy that one. I think Catherine actually admitted that this is probably a dropped plotline as well. We're introduced to this strange character who speaks similar to the Ellimist, but like Jake says, isn't the Ellimist or Kryak or anything else he recognises. Just this thing that pops up at the end of this crazy dream that Jake's had and says, we shall study this species further. And then what? It just never occurs. We never find out who this was. And the best the fans can do, and what I'd probably advise fans to do, is just use your headcanon. Because it's obvious that Applegate never put in the follow-up to this. So just choose yourself who this was. It's the best thing you can do, because it is like the definition of a dropped plot line. They introduced this character, add a bit of mystery, and then just never address it again. Just like, whoops, that never happened. So yeah, it's not the biggest, but it's such a definitive. It's like the dictionary definition of a dropped plot line, which is why it's quite a big one on this list. And it comes in such a good book as well. Number 4, and we're taking a journey back to Book 8, The Alien, and not for the last time. When Axe communicates with the Andalites, he talks to his father, from what I remember. He talks to, it's definitely one of his parents, I'm pretty sure it's the father. And he says, "Oh, father, it appears my brother has left this mortal coil." And his father says, "Bloody hell. Alright, kill the bloke who killed him, that'll do it." There's an Andalite tradition, a revenge tradition. You must avenge your fallen brother. For you must kill the person who murdered Prince Elfangor, our son. And Axe takes this on. And for this whole book, he's saying, it's my duty now, my sworn duty, to avenge my brother. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to kill Visser 3. Does he? Like sods, does he? Even when he's given the opportunity at the end of the series, book 54 comes along. There's Visser 3 there. What does Axe do? It's just like, I'll let the bureaucrats take care of this. I'm not getting involved. Yeah, this whole thing of Axe is now the one who will have to kill Visser 3. It's like Game of Thrones, Jon Snow. Everyone just assumes that he's going to kill the Night King. And he just doesn't. Now see, it's even worse than that, because Jon Snow never come and said, "I'll be the one to kill the Night King." No, he never said that. Whereas in Animorphs, Axe was I'll do it. I'll kill Visser 3. It's my job. That's what I'm here to do. That's my thing. And he just doesn't. He never does it. Barely even mentions it as his sworn duty again. And not only that, but he bigs up this idea of, I'm gonna have a Tailblade fight with Visser 3. And the one time he does, it's just in the background. I think it's in Visser. It's in the Visser Chronicles. It's just in the background. Oh, by the way, Axe is fighting Visser 3 over there. It might have been a different one, but it's certainly, that's what happened. At one point, he has a Tailblade fight with Visser 3, just somewhere in the background as something more important is going on over here. And that's about the closest we ever got to this being fulfilled. It just never happens. You gotta stick by these things. Again, even if it's just one line at book 54, where Axe steps up and says, "Esplin, I should kill you right now, it's my sworn duty, but alas, I must drop the old traditions." Because then that would surely be the climax of his character as well. Because the whole point of Axe, basically every single Axe book is the same basic plotline of, am I loyal to the Andalites and the Andalite traditions, or am I loyal to the humans? And, not sticking so rigidly to tradition. That's the Axe, that's his arc. It's the same freaking plotline in every single Axe book as him going, that side or that side? I'll choose that side in this book, and then next book I'll make it fair, I'll split it evenly. At the end of the series, book 54, what should have happened was Axe finally comes up and says, "It is Andalite tradition for me to kill this Yerk right now, but I shall cast asunder these old traditions and show some level of mercy, and you'll go through the frickin' Earth justice system." Depends what state you're in, what's going to happen to you. Yeah, but it never happened. It just didn't, and we never got that. It's another part of book 8 that was just dropped. It fell off the face of the Animorphs plot series thing. And it's one of the worst examples, but it's only number 4. We've got 3 more, so let's move on to number 3, shall we? Number 3 is an odd one, a unique one, because it all takes place sort of in the same book. Most of these, something happens in one book, and then you'd think something would happen with it in a future book, but it doesn't. This one, the Andalite Chronicles, okay? This is one of the worst moments in the entire series. In fact, I think I might have rated it my worst. The killer asteroids. So, Elfangor's on this ship, and there's a fleet over there, an Andalite fleet, and they're being attacked by these killer asteroids. It's like living asteroids that sort of engulf these ships and swallow them up. And then one of them starts swallowing his ship. And like Lauren's unconscious and all that sort of stuff. He's like, oh, what do we do now? What do we do? And then, when I say it's sort of in the same book, it's because the Andalite Chronicles was 3 books sort of combined into one. And that was the end of part 2. Start of part 3, the asteroids are gone. They're just like, no. Mom, go away. Now there's a black hole. So the asteroids are a dropped plotline, and probably the most egregious one. The only reason it's not higher on this list is because you can just sort of say the authors were high, probably, and just forgot where they were or what they were doing. Oh, mate, what was something like some space thing? I think it was a black hole. Yeah. So you can just sort of say, well, it's just an example of atrocious writing. Let's just forget this happened. But because it happens in the same book, yeah, you can just sort of say, bleh. When something like happens longer and it's supposed to be a bigger plot point, you know, it's a bit more rubbish, which is why it's only third in this list. But it's still such an egregious bit of writing, isn't it? It's like, I've never read anything worse than that particular sequence. Sorry. It's just terrible. Number 2. So we're into the big boys now. And we're going back to book 8. What are we getting in book 8 now, you ask? How many drop plotlines were there in this book? This is the book where we're introduced to the idea of Yeerks infiltrating the Andalite homeworld. Alaran is, you know, he's on the floor like, oh, bugger me, you know. The Yeerks, you know, he left my ear, but I'm not going to tell you, I'm just going to ramble on at you. So he's on the floor and he says, the Yeerks, they've infiltrated the homeworld. They're there, they're on the Andalite homeworld. Be scared, be afraid. So we're like, damn it, like our major allies are being infiltrated as we speak. And then this is revisited sort of later in book 18, the next Axe book, where Visifree morphs some Andalite bird, forget exactly what it's called, but Kaffit bird, I think that's what it's called, morphs this big Andalite bird that lives on the Andalite homeworld, and Axe says, dear God, it must be that the Yeerks are on the Andalite homeworld, much like Alaran already told us, but it's like I'm remembering it again for the first time. And then, well, firstly, it's mentioned in the Andalite Chronicles that every recruit basically already has this morph, so that explains it away. Secondly, yeah, Axe, you already told that. Why are you talking as if you never even knew that? And then thirdly, why was this never brought up again? Never again. We never visit the homeworld. We never get another report of, oh no, but one of our bases got freaking taken or whatever. There is the part in book 18 where there's like a mutant, who was it? No, it wasn't Samalin, the Andalite traitor who turns on the Andalites. I mean, you could sort of imply that maybe that's something to do with the Yeerks being on the homeworld, but even then, still nothing happens because of it. We never hear of it again. And Yeerks on the Andalite homeworld, like the main allies' homeworld. We're not going to address that. That's just swept under the rug. We don't have to worry about it. Pretty big plotline you've just sort of given us and offered us. In this one big moment where Alaran's lying on the floor at death's door, saying, beware, for they are on the Andalite homeworld now. Shock horror! I certainly hope they don't drop this particular plotline. Unfortunately, they do. And that's a pretty big one. I'm pretty sure you agree. That is pretty big. Now, before we get on to the top one, I've got a couple of honourable mentions. And they're not on this list primarily because they weren't necessarily drop plot lines. It was just something that people said would happen, but they never got round to it. So the first one of those is the Yeerks visiting the Escort. Because you remember in book 26 where we were introduced to the Escort, At the end of the book, they say, why did we save the Escort? And the Elmis says, because in 300 years or so, when the Yeerks visit the Escort, they will see the error of their ways. Right, so the Yeerks were defeated about 3 years later. What was the point? Why did you do this? Why the need? That's what the Elmis, he can see the future. So what, is he predicting that the Yeerks will make a comeback? Maybe. Which is why I'm sort of not putting it on this list. Because that's almost sort of like, I don't know, but it just seems like a bit of a drop plot line to me. And the other one is pretty similar. Book 36, the Nartek. Jake basically says, you know, when this war is over, I'm going to go back down there and I'm going to beat the ruddy out of them. And he never does. So, honorary mention for this list. Let's move on to number 1. Number 1. The biggest subplot. Even the TV series brought it in. You know, it's this big thing. It was mentioned time and time again. What effect did it have? Zilch. What effect? And I'll bring back Game of Thrones again for this one. Jon Snow. Who was my father, Jon Snow? What was his lineage? And we got the scene where Sean Bean's younger actor replacement went into the castle and he saw this dying person and took the child and said, no one will know of your lineage, young Jon Snow. And you're just going to be Jon Snow rather than Jon, I don't know, Ice and Fire, whatever your name is. What becomes of Jon Snow's lineage in Game of Thrones? Nothing. We get this whole mystery and everyone theorizes about it and it becomes this big thing. We find it out. Oh no, he's a Targaryen. How will this affect things going forward? It doesn't. Tobias's lineage. Tobias's father, Elfangor. We get the whole bit at the start where he stays Elfangor longer and Elfangor somehow puts a memory dump, like a freaking USB stick, jams it in Tobias's ear. And we get that. Book 23 comes along and it turns out that Tobias figures out that he's related to Elfangor. Oh no, shock horror. What does this mean for the series? Book 33 comes along and he gets flashbacks of Elfangor. Like they were wrong because book 33 is a load of rubbish and can't get facts straight. He gets memories from Elfangor. And then he has the whole Utsum thing, which acts as like the Utsum. It's like a religious thing. It's like spiritual, you know. Elfangor is part of you, and blah, 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 blah. And then what? Nothing. Nothing. It doesn't lead to anything. There's no need for it to be there, really. It doesn't take the whole Elfangor's my father bit out of the Animal storyline, and the what changes. I mean, let me try. Let me try to justify it with my justifying sort of brain, because I do this. This is what I do. I theorize on things and come up with solutions that sometimes just you don't need them. I've got that sort of brain. I like to think abstractly. Okay, so if Tobias wasn't Elfangor's son, book 33 changes. It doesn't really happen from what I remember. So what happens because of that? What would happen there is they don't get suspicious of this imposter that Visser 3 is playing. Forget her name. Arya. I think that's her name, isn't it? Arya. So they didn't chase her. So they didn't find Beck in the cage. They didn't find that circus where Beck was being kept. So they infest Beck and they find the Hork-Bajir. The Hork-Bajir are then defeated, which affects another one of our drop plot lines. We never have the Clone Beia up on the Hork-Bajir homeworld to take the Yeerk's attention away from other projects, which means the Yeerk forces are stronger in other areas. And because of that, they can supply more resources for Idris on the Anati homeworld, which is another drop plot line. And so Idris survives and causes an Andalite defeat at the Anati homeworld, which causes desperation amongst the Andalites. They then find that the Yeerks are attacking them from behind enemy lines because they were on the homeworld all along. So not only have the Andalites been defeated by the Anati over there, but now the Yeerks have come out in force on their own planet. Andalite panic. And they don't know what to do, and they can't get to Earth. They don't even do the plot line in book 52 where they come to Earth. They've sodded back to their home planet to stop that from going on, which means that Axe has to take things into his own hands. And he runs to the Yeerk pool and tries to kill Visser 3 to fulfill his oath to avenge his brother. But he is defeated. And the Yeerks win in the battle against Earth and the Andalites. They beat all those allies and everything is tragic forever. That's why it's important that we knew that. That's why it's important that Tobias was Elfangor's son, because that chain of events, there you go, I've done it, I've solved the issue, as well as a few other plot lines. I've solved Animorphs, guys. But no, seriously, without my abstract speculation being applied to it, it really makes no difference to the plot line. So yeah, that's my number one. It was this massive thing that spanned from book 1 all the way to, book 33, I think, is where we sort of last get anything of that. That's 33 books at least of this being a subplot, something important here. And then it just has no effect on the rest of the series. Take out the fact that Tobias is Elfangor's son and what changes? And all you can do is make up, like I've just done. You can come up with theories, but then there's nothing concrete, there's nothing canon there. You've got to think of it yourself, which I think is the definition of a dropped plotline and the biggest one of the Animorphs series. Bang! Let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm wrong on any of these. What's your top dropped plotline from the Animorphs series? Let's have a jolly good discussion about it. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Ta-ra from somewhere in the Animorphs universe. I'm going to drop my own plotline now. 3, 2, 1, ta-ta.